Hey, welcome to the podcast, RJ.
Thank you. Thank you for having me, Astrid. Thank you so much.
You're very welcome. For anyone who doesn't know you, who do you say you are?
Who do I say I am? Wow, that's asking me to describe myself. Um, I'm an African American, non-binary artist living in Georgia, um, multidisciplinarian, and I'm also a business person. And I'd probably say equally as much a business person as I am an artist, if that actually is a thing somewhere in the world.
That's what's up. And tell me a little bit about how you grew up. Is Atlanta home for you always?
Oh no. So my grandmother is from South Carolina and she was part of that migration to New York, in like the 70s, I want to say, possibly before then. I actually really need to confirm that with her. She had my mom in South Bronx, actually, right around the time that hip hop is coming into being. And
Okay,
my father is from Buffalo, right there on the falls. That's where his side of the family is from.
gotcha.
So no, they actually had me in New Jersey. They had me in the parking lot. And then we ended up, my grandma raised me in Starlet City, Brooklyn for about a year.
Hmm.
And then around the time that I was 4, we moved down here. So I was born in 94. So I've been
Gotcha.
in probably before 4, possibly. I've been in Georgia since 97, 98, and then just continued to go back and forth to
Okay,
between there and New York and Jersey.
gotcha.
But I've lived all over Georgia. I've lived Man, I lived in Fayette County. I lived in Stone Mountain. I've lived in Hateville. Lived in College Park. I've been
Mm,
in Fairburn recently, and I live in Tucker right now. But
mm,
I've been literally all over Georgia. Like, it's kind of funny actually, because there's still tons of places. Like Georgia's so huge, and even Atlanta is so huge that like there's so
mm.
many little pockets that you keep finding.
Yeah,
But I've been in a lot of those little pockets here and there, like over the years.
that's what's up. And like you mentioned earlier, the migration that your grandma made from South Carolina to New York, I wasn't familiar with that. Can you tell me a little bit about that?
Yeah. So like I said, I need to check with her because
Uh,
I don't want to tell her story incorrectly.
gotcha.
But she's one of 12,
Hmm.
and the majority of them, I believe, the sisters, because it's only one boy, my Uncle Jerry.
Oh,
Everyone else, everyone, yeah. So and if I'm not mistaken, I believe he's the youngest.
Mm,
But everybody moved to New York, or at least a good portion of them did, and they just
yeah,
kind of like set down roots there, had families, and then a lot of them actually ended up moving back to South Carolina or even Florida because a lot of my
gotcha.
family's from Florida as well.
Okay.
Um, so it's just kind of like go up there, increase the standard of living or increase like the opportunity, and then bring that back to where you're originally from.
Mm,
And my grandma has always been, if I'm not incorrect, I believe she left home like 12, 13, something like
oh,
that. You know what I
wow.
mean? Like she's been yeah, she's always been her. You know what I mean? So she kind
Yeah.
of like I feel like is actually the driving force for a lot of the energy that I get from my mom in
Hmm.
general. And she's kind of just been always like this beacon of like you can go and do it if you just start doing it. You know what I mean? Like she used to
Mm.
walk to school back and forth kind of thing. Like she was, she in the era that she was born in, like post pre segregation, post Jim Crow, somewhere in there maybe. And once again,
Mhm.
I need to go like actually confirm this stuff for her.
Right,
So
right,
like I'm gonna do
right.
my own research. But no, she used to walk back and forth from like miles, like back and forth just to get to school kind of thing. So
Gotcha.
yeah, at some point when she was able to, she moved up there with a bunch of family and they just set down roots and then came back when they decided they'd gotten enough in New York.
Yeah. I guess how do you like the pace of living between like New York and or New York, New Jersey to Atlanta, Georgia? Because I'm sure much different styles, but I mean Atlanta, bigger city, still faster paced than like other pockets of Georgia where it's like it's a little bit slower, a little bit slower pace.
Yeah, no, that's fair. Ironically, so what I remember of New Jersey, because I haven't been up there for 3 years now, and
Hmm.
it's so funny. I like to watch walk around vids on YouTube where people just literally walk around a part of a city or something. So
Hmm.
there's so much development that's happened in New Jersey. I'm from Hackensack, New Jersey specifically originally. Right there, if I'm getting my exits right, if I'm getting my exits right, don't fillet
Hmm.
me all. It's 225. If you're in Harlem and
Hmm.
you hit 225A, 225A will take you to Hackensack. If I'm not incorrect, y'all don't
Mhm.
flay me. But New Jersey is like much quieter than New York. I mean, obviously because New York is like a giant mecca. But funny enough, so a lot of my family is from South Carolina. I
Mhm.
enjoy being adjacent or near the city with like in 10 miles, even where I'm at in Tucker right now.
Mhm.
Actually places us equidistance between Decatur, Stone Mountain, and just like general Atlanta. So like
Yeah.
everything is pretty much 20 to 25 minutes away, which is beautiful.
Right.
But I actually love being in the country where like I can't hear anything going on in the city.
Mhm.
Like when I'm in the city, I love it. I love being immersed in it. I love like the sights, the smell, the sounds, the overload,
Mhm.
which is what it basically is. Because New York, like even before the pandemic, nothing in New York ever sleeps. Like nothing ever. So you can go get food anytime you want. You can go walk around and always find something to do. That part of New York is like beautiful. That part
Mhm.
of like just literally always endlessly being able to create and do something is like amazing for me. But I also realized that at some points I'm like, I like to be like I just said, very far away from that sometimes. And like just like, oh, I can't hear any of that right now. And how beautiful it is that this bird is chirping outside of my window at 6 a.m. It feels wonderful. So I like all of it to be honest. But
Mhm.
to be fair, my favorite preference is somewhere um developed or rural,
Mhm.
still with like basic accommodation, and then being close enough to the city within like 10 to 15 miles of it is like my
Gotcha.
ideal like life for sure.
Yeah. It's pretty cool. I guess what was growing up like when you made the move down to Georgia or just the group of friends you kept.
Oh, to be fair, the only people that I actually kept as friends would have been family, like when I
Mhm.
would go up there, because
Mhm.
I remember I still have memories of New Jersey and of New York, but a lot of the time I actually spent in Brooklyn was with my grandmother. And
Mhm.
then the time in Jersey that I spent, I'm not sure if I had too many friends then. Like outside of like family who like I literally still keep in contact with to this day.
Mhm.
Like there's not too many people that I go up to New York now. Or if I have friends in New York now, it's like friends that I've made literally as I've been going through teenage to like adult years kind of thing.
Yeah.
But the move down here, it wasn't bad at all. Like I remember I used to tell my mom all the time though. Like I was actually just thinking about this today. I used to be like, there's nothing to do in Georgia. There's nothing to do in Atlanta. But I realized that like I was still carrying New York around with me from as a child. And of
Mhm.
course, like nothing compares to anything really. Like Georgia doesn't compare to New York. Like there are things about Georgia that you can't get in New York
Mhm.
whatsoever. It just doesn't exist. Even in upstate New York where it's like trees and Niagara Falls and like there are just certain things that don't exist in like other places. But it's been wonderful, honestly. Like I find Georgia to be like this Georgia literally puts me in like the calmest state of mind sometimes. Like if I'm just allowing myself to be in it and I'm not allowing my mind to go off in different directions about what I'm doing or this has to happen. Like if I can just sit in it, it's literally like what's the word? Like a silence chamber or something. Like it's like you're
Mhm.
just literally in this space where you could go to the city or you could
Yeah.
just like go out to like a nature trail or you could go out to preserve or you could go like find like a neighborhood where people don't really like drive on the streets at certain times and they don't care if you like decide to drive like skate down their hill at 15 miles an hour. You know what I mean? So it's like
Mhm.
there's like the move I think at first to like your point, I think I really did miss the North a lot more. And I felt like we shouldn't have been in Georgia for a good part of my life. But then as like I actually spent time here, because my mom would always tell me, because of course
Mhm.
she grew up in New York and then
Mhm.
came here like as an adult, you know what I mean? So she'd be like, no, there's definitely stuff to do, Rondald. You just have to find it. And then for
Mhm.
the longest time, I'd be like, well, mom, I can't find it. I can't find it. And it was actually open mics, poetry open mics. I started going to due to a recommendation in 2012. I graduated, and then I started going to Georgia Military College, their Fairburn campus, which actually wasn't too far from where my father lives.
Mhm.
And there we had like a open mic, it was like maybe five of us who were all in the drama department. We were in the drama department. Our teacher decides, which she is a genius for this, to have an open
Mhm.
mic, which all of us, of course, it was just us and a few other people that showed up.
Mhm.
But she was listening to us read, and she's like, y'all should go to this place called Java Monkey in
Mhm.
Decatur. Java Monkey has since burned down and actually been replaced with another coffee house that is looking to apparently reinstate the open mic culture there. So we're like
Mhm.
a lot of us are fingers crossed for that. But that got me into like the dance community that got me into the club scene, that got me into the music community, that got me into the hip hop community.
Hmm.
So it was like literally it started becoming like a small world kind of thing. Like everywhere I went, I just started running into more people that I knew, no matter like what I was doing, kind of thing.
Right, right.
Yeah.
Gotcha. So I guess like was that always an interest of yours, like doing drama, or like how'd you get into that at, like in school and just going in that direction?
Oh, that's my parents. And it's funny because like I have to still think about it to like bring it up consciously, but
Hmm.
they've had me in comedy and acting workshops since like I was a kid.
Oh wow.
Um, Even like I used to do classes at the Alliance Theater, like workshops at the Alliance Theater. That was probably like when I was, gee, geez, looking for like actual time frame, maybe like 7, 8,
Hmm.
something like that. And then I got really big into around the time that what, like I was like 15, maybe 13, 14, going into 15.
Hmm.
And I joined AMTC, which was Actors Model and Talent for Christ. That was like a I don't know if they're still in business now because some of their buildings that used to be up are like gone and replaced by other things.
Hmm.
But that was like one of those programs where like basically you come in and you pay them money to teach you how to act and model and stuff, and then you go to this giant convention. For some people, it's a pyramid scheme. For other people, they actually got some success out of it. For
Hmm.
me, like I wasn't able to continue um, with the program in the moment because we just had other things going on in life. But
Right,
like it
right.
inspired me to like continue on with the acting and the modeling and stuff. So when I was like going into my late teens, starting to go into like my adult years, there was
Hmm.
another place called John Casablanca. John
Hmm.
Casablanca is a similar setup to like AMTC. And I actually completed that program 100%. Actually, the only thing I didn't do, which is funny, the convention was in Texas for $500.
Hmm.
I saved up $500
Hmm.
in change in a 16-ounce water jug, paid the money, and then didn't go to the convention, which
Oh
was
no.
hilarious. Like I was just like, I don't feel like going anymore, so I'm just gonna like not go. And it's wild thinking about that because I'm like, I just spent $500 that I didn't even like I didn't ask them to refund it or anything. I just was like, oh, y'all can have it.
Yeah.
But at that time, I started doing a bunch of extra roles also like in the city. You know, we can just get on like sets and stuff here and there.
Okay.
So one of them that I did was like Black Lightning back in 2000. It must have been 2017, 2016 going into 2017. And I actually was briefly featured in a speaking role. I didn't find this
Hmm.
out till like the actual season aired, and people were like hitting me up about it, like, "Yo, you're on TV, bro. You're on Netflix." Like, I
I
was like, "On
remember
what?
that show.
I'm on like, yeah, yeah." And I'm like, "I'm on what?" Like, but I just started doing a bunch of those, and I would just end up cameoing in just like a bunch of things, whether I was like speaking or not. And
Hmm.
that just kind of kept my interest in acting going. And then kind of like the same thing because a lot of the people who are doing these extra roles, they work 9 to 5s or
Hmm.
they're models or they're even like established artists, but they still want to break into this particular field, which is acting. So you just
Hmm.
end up running into a lot of people again, and they'd be like, "Hey, there's an event over here. There's an event over there." Same thing at open mics. Hey, where can I find other poetry open mics? Where
Yeah.
can I find other shows? Where so you literally just end up kind of like running into it. But my interest literally has been since the beginning. My mom actually, before I was even interested in all this stuff, before she
Hmm.
had me, like literally had me,
Hmm.
she was doing this whole thing with like grandma,
Hmm.
you know, like back before. So like she would be doing acting and modeling and talent for whichever agency that was that she was doing in New York.
Yeah.
And then she just kept up with it up until the point that she stopped. But then she handed that on to me. So kind of like generational, I guess. Same
Yeah.
thing with hip hop, actually. She was a rapper in New York. And to
Hmm.
me, she still is. Literally, like Big Bank Hank dated her friend, like came over to her house type thing. You know what I mean? For like Sugar
Hmm.
Hill Gang, like
Oh
she
wow.
saw Melly Mel and Molly Mall. Like, you know what I mean? Like they used to walk on her block type thing. Like she was at the block parties that literally people reference as, oh, this is how hip hop started. That was her culture. That was her lifestyle. She was in those dance clubs kind of thing. So like
Man.
literally like hand me down, like complete hand me down actually. Yeah.
That's what's up. It's funny usually when you hear the term hand me down, it's like, man, this is like someone's leftovers or whatnot. But it's like, hey, sometimes hand me downs are snug. You can still fit them and they wear well.
Yeah, they do. And they take you places because you're end up like my connection to even like hip hop or like the culture of it or really the lifestyle of it is
Mm,
like so it's so real for me because I'm literally I can always talk to my mom and be like, you literally lived through this. And my dad, in the same way, ironically enough, he went to school in Tuskegee in
Mm,
Alabama, right? When he left
mm,
New York, when he left Buffalo,
yeah.
he saw he knows the tour manager for the Ohio Players. He was at my sister's wedding. You know
Oh
what I mean?
wow.
Like he saw like the Commodores and like a lot of these groups now, a lot of these R&B groups that are huge, that are legendary, that are classic. He literally saw them starting and playing and touring college shows. You know what I mean? So like
Yeah.
from both sides of my family, because you know, once again, hip hop samples from a lot of that music, a lot of that era, like even still consistently to this day.
Right. Right.
So I got it really from like both sides, where it was just like my parents were already immersed in that culture, and they just literally were, as they were showing me music. Like my grandmother, perfect example. She put me on a Lenny Williams when I was like a child. So like
Mm,
I literally grow up with like all these artists and people still to this day. They're like, you don't know anything about this music, and I'm like, no, I literally do. Like it's all I listened to for a good part of my life. Like family
mm,
reunions, like kickbacks. Like this was all that we played. So this is all that I knew.
right.
I didn't actually listen to hip hop outside of like Poison, you know, like Bell Biv DeVoe being like on the
Mm,
radio or something like that, or like you might get like a rap verse in an R&B song kind of thing.
yeah.
I didn't listen to hip hop till I was 12. Like I specifically remember it. It was my cousins in South Carolina had an iPod and they let me borrow it, and on it they had some Lil Wayne,
Mm,
and I was listening to it. And I'm like, wow, this what what is this? What am I experiencing? And of course, like you know, like I like some experience with my friends, like when I go over to their houses, you know, like their parents let them listen to hip hop, so I might get
mm,
like some Petey Pablo or like some Sierra with a Missy Elliott feature or something like that. But
mm,
like literally, like it wasn't like I grew up listening to hip hop. It's like I literally kind of discovered it, although my folks were literally
mm.
in it. And
Right.
then
Right.
from there was able to come back and be like, y'all, what is this? And they're like, you discovered it now. So this is what it is. Like
Mm.
kind of the
That's pretty neat. It's almost like you went on this quest you didn't even know you were on. It's like you go from acting into like now music and poetry and things like that. And you're like, oh wow, this is like, it's natural. Like it fits me.
literally a lot of it transfers over too. Like a lot of like improv acting is really to me the same thing as freestyle rapping in the sense of like if you're allowing yourself and you can get that free, you're just drawing from maybe your whatever you're observing or whatever's coming through your thought or whatever stream of consciousness, but you're not
Mhm.
necessarily putting these things down or like deciding how it's going to come out. You're just like basically working with it as it goes. And in improv acting, they call that yes and.
Mm,
In rapping, we just call it flowing, but it's the same concept. You're just going along with whatever sense impressions are coming up. You're not necessarily trying to be the best actor or the best rapper, but it's like a lot of the same traits carry over. And then the same thing about dancing, because like even like dancing, which I also got from my mom in that
mhm,
sense, like everyone in my family can dance, of course, but like she like for hours, you know what I mean? Like she would go to clubs with changes of clothes and like dance for like hours at a time till the club closed, and like then she would come back home. And that same thing, like I would do that at MJQ here in
right.
Atlanta. It's like you know, yeah, really popular club. Every Wednesday from 11 to 3, they're free. So I would go there from 11 to 3 and I wouldn't leave the floor if I could help it. I would literally get on the floor at 11 and I would not leave the floor until 3. I would dance the entire time.
Oh
So
wow.
like dancing in that same sense, like when you dance to music, it allows you to find those pockets that you might not find like rapping or singing. You know what I
Mm,
mean? Because you're literally still having to interact with the music. But then when you go back and you do rap or sing or however, or even produce an instrumental,
mm,
the same it transfers over. You're like, oh, I could put this here, or I could even make music that I know people would dance to because I have my experiences to draw on of me dancing to similar music or stuff that's like moved me. So like to your point, like it all does especially the more you get into it, like it does feel like a quest because you really do start finding these pieces that like fit together, and it's like, oh, this helped me do this. You know what I mean? This kind of
mm,
set me up for this kind of thing, and that's kind of been like a running theme in my life, almost even like in
mm.
not even just in my artistic life, but just even in like fun fact. Please let me know. Like, please cut me off
No, you're good. You're
anytime.
good.
So I'm Bayesian by my mom's side, Bayesian and Sierra Leone, Leonean. Uh,
Wait, what
and
you said Bayesian. What is Bayesian?
Bayesian is Caribbean, so like Barbados.
Oh, okay, okay.
Yeah. So like Antiguan, Haitian, Jamaican,
Hmm.
like Caribbean.
Okay.
Um, so New Jersey, I found out just on a random like because I just got really into like my origins and stuff. You know,
Mm,
as most of us here in America do, who are
mm,
of African American descent. or really of any American descent, if you have immigrant like parents or
Mm,
immigrant family. New Jersey was originally called New Barbados when it was first turned into a colony. So it's hilarious that me, someone who is Bayesian,
mm,
grew up unknowing, because by the time that I was born, it was New Jersey. There was no
mm.
New Barbados, anything. But like, it's wild that I'm Bayesian and then I was born in a place that was literally called New Barbados that was from like, so it's like,
Wow.
yeah, there's so many threads in my life that are like that that just always keep coming up. Because when I told my grandma that, she laughed. She was like, I feel like you've been here before, probably, or something. And I was like, I don't know, grandma, but whatever it is, you know what I mean? Whatever it is, it's definitely like I'm gonna keep finding it. I'm gonna keep following the thread, even if it doesn't necessarily lead to like an end.
Mm,
The crumbs that I'm getting on the way, the journey is just as good as the destination, I guess would
mm.
be the best way to put it.
That's
Yeah.
that is a pretty good way to put it. I guess as you learn to like express yourself through art or just be in the flow of things, has it always been like a flow process, or did you find yourself ever like forcing something or kind of like stumbling over your words where you're like, okay, like this is working, it's not working, it's okay, okay. I gotta let go and stop trying to control everything and maybe like go in this way. But I do want it to have this kind of feel to it. I do want it to like mean something in this direction. I am trying to get a message across. Like how do you go about expressing your art?
No, that's super fair. That's a super fair question. So my dad, right? My dad is super
Mm,
talented at jingles, super talented at just randomly coming up with stuff on the fly. So is my mom, which of course also then leads into the whole freestyling thing. But they're also very practical. They're also very about like, well, can you make money off of it? Can you turn it into, can you capitalize on it? Is there something that you can get from it? So that like, so I always had this part of me, and I think Mr. Wiggles, the legendary breakdancer and dancer, this is one of his quotes, like one of
mm,
his ideas, but he would be like, just practice the moves that you, and it's actually a quote too that's existed for a long time, but so I stopped conflating. Mr. Wiggles would be like, rather than worrying about getting every move perfect, just practice the move to the point where it's ingrained in you and you don't have to think about bringing it out to the
mm.
point where it just happens on its own.
Yeah.
The other proverb that I was thinking of is I don't fear the man who knows 1,000 kicks, or even the person. I fear the person who's practiced one kick 1,000 times. It's the idea of just like drilling something with repetition to the point where it's just like automatic.
Hmm.
Now, in that, to your original point, so on the business side of things, right, I would always be beating myself up because I'd be like, well, this song is really good, or this freestyle was good, or like for instance, like even outside of the dancing, like photography,
Hmm.
um setting up events for people, doing digital media creation. Like I was always running around to like all these events in like my early 20s, like everywhere in Atlanta. I'm hitting maybe 3 4 events in a day, 5 6 events on a weekend, you know what I mean, just attempting to like, and all these events I'm not necessarily getting paid for, but this is my idea at the time of networking, this is my idea at the time of getting my name out there.
Right,
But
right.
I'm always so critical of myself in these moments. I'm like, oh, I should still be doing more. Oh,
Mm,
I should still be. I'm literally, uh, I might wake up in the morning on a weekend after not having really slept like at all. And then I'm
mm,
like running around, falling asleep, almost driving, which is not good, which I've
mm.
stopped doing, thankfully. But the whole time I'm telling myself, oh, like if I were to practice more, I'd be better. Or if I were to spend more time with this, I'd be better. If I would do more of this, I'd be better, which I would do. But
Mm,
then I still wouldn't be satisfied with it because it was always in the idea, or in my mind at that point, it was always, well, I haven't made enough money off of it yet. So obviously, despite what people are telling me, despite people saying I'm talented or I'm really great at this, or wow, how amazing that was, or even that I emotionally moved them, it's not enough for me because I don't see the dollars that also then equate to what you're telling me. So
mm,
like for a long time, Asher, like it was I actually could not be happy with myself. I couldn't actually give myself any grace. It didn't matter how much I was or wasn't doing. I could have had a perfect weekend where I made a substantial amount of money and I put out a bunch of songs, or I went and saw a bunch of people, or I went and hung out with a bunch of family or friends in an artistic sense, and also just in a familial sense of just sharing space and communion, right?
mm,
And still not be happy, still not find any joy in it whatsoever at the end of it, because then I tear myself down and being like, well, none of that was actually worth it though. So it was still a waste of your
Mm,
time. So as I kind of got like, and actually it's been recent, much more recent. Like I would say in the last 6 years, and sometimes it's still the original mindset still comes up.
mhm,
But I've gotten to the point now where I just practice to fail, basically, to put it like in weightlifting terms. Like
mm,
I would for what last year I think I rapped almost every day for about maybe like a 6 month period, like
mhm,
for 20 to 30 minutes at a time, right? I would go out to like MJQ every Wednesday while I'm still doing that. And then I would find time to like practice photography and all this other stuff. So what I started doing is I took those proverbs and those ideas that I was talking about earlier to heart.
mhm,
I just practiced to the point where I didn't have to think about, am I good enough at this or can I do this? Because to your point about freestyling, I would set goals or affirmations. I'd be like, I want to get so good at freestyling that people literally believe that I just wrote a song. Someone could literally not believe, even if I'm looking them in the eyes, I'm honestly telling them to a fault, no, that was a freestyle. Like I didn't think about any of that. None of
mhm,
it was premeditated. I don't even know what I said, to be honest with you. Like I'd have to go back and look at the recording or listen to the recording to actually tell you what I said.
mm,
I would set those affirmations. I'd say, I want to get um so good at rapping that I can interact, or even dancing, that I can
mhm,
interact with every part of the instrumental at the same time, that I could interact with even the smallest like hi-hat or snare in the background while still being completely on beat with the drums and the guitar or the bass, whatever's going on in the forefront, right?
mm,
And then I would forget, in a sense. I would write those things down, I'd put it in a notebook somewhere, and then I just push that stuff to the side. And
mm,
then I'd just go practice. I'd go listen to Nas or Jay-Z or someone that I thought was like proficient in that area. And
mm,
then I would go and or even Missy, like really a lot of Missy. And then I would just practice. Oh, reference material. I go read a book, I go watch a podcast, I go listen
mhm,
to something. And then over time, like I would realize, and it wouldn't even be in the moment, like maybe 6 months go by, maybe a year goes by,
mhm,
and I'm somewhere dancing or I'm somewhere rapping or I'm somewhere doing something and someone says the literal thing that was my affirmation. Wow, was that a song that you just wrote? Did you come up with that? No, it was a freestyle. Like, how did you dance like that? Oh, I just practiced. Oh, I just went over here. Oh, I just did this. So
right.
to summarize, no, for a long time I actually could not be happy with anything that I did, regardless
Mm,
of how good it was. And also because many times in the process of learning things, for many of us, it's often difficult to see yourself at the finish line, because the finish line is going to keep moving. Once you reach the goal, the finish line immediately resets itself somewhere else. And then if you have
mhm,
goals, then of course it then resets itself again. But it took me giving myself grace and becoming happy with the fact that I was actively pursuing my goals, which is, and this is not my quote, but if
mm,
you success is the worthy realization of a continuous goal. That's Earl Nightingale, and I
mm,
want to say Napoleon Hill, even really, from Think and Grow Rich.
yeah.
And Think and Grow Rich and The Stranger's Secret, I also want to say, is where Earl Nightingale espoused that particular belief. But no, I just literally got to the point where I could give myself grace, and I said, well, I'm practicing, I'm actively doing these things, I'm actively in my community, I'm actively going places and doing things. So that, more so than anything else, is what's going to put me where I need to be. So if
Yeah.
I just keep doing that, then I'll get to a point where I'm doing and receiving the income or whatever else I need to do. So that's where I'm at now, is like a place of, which, like I said, still sometimes I'll still be like, you're not really doing enough.
Mm,
But often those thoughts actually become now, well, what could you do more of? Or
mm,
what things are even already within your sphere of influence that you could just tap, rather than saying, I'm not doing enough. It's like, well, maybe you just need to put a bit more focus here for a moment, and then that could carry you even further than you thought. So much more grace now, much more belief in what I'm doing.
mm,
When I go to express or explain my art, there's always a feeling of, I'll get my message across if I just say my message. But before, it would have been, I can't really take any pride or pleasure in what I'm doing, even if it's great.
mhm,
As I'm learning and practicing, I'm still beating myself up because I'm not where I think I should be. Although, of course, practice is always going to be practice, no matter how good you are. Because if you continuously want to improve anyway, you can always practice and get better at something.
mhm,
And then to end that out, literally just the idea that one, it's already there, and two,
Mm,
like I've seen it. So if I can think about it in here and I
mm,
can be comfortable with it in here, then it's already an established thing.
mm,
So that's like pretty much like how I feel about it now. Oh, that was my ending actually. It's the I don't have to worry about if someone's going to understand it or not. Like
right.
I may get opportunities to explain it. I may have time where I can like, oh, you want me to explain exactly what I meant in this particular bar, or why this artwork cover looks like this, or what I was going for with this particular project or this particular book even.
Mm,
Um, I can explain that to you if you want, but I
mm,
also realize that everyone's going to interpret and experience me first as a person differently than I'm going to experience myself, and they're also
mm,
going to experience my art differently than I'm going to experience it. So I just have to allow grace for that. Some people also may be like, I don't like your art for whatever reason, whether it's because they don't like me, because they don't like the art, because they don't like the
mm,
art form, because they don't resonate particularly with the way I specifically do the art form.
right.
But if I just put the art out there, then it'll reach who it needs to reach, and then I can have whatever conversations I need to have.
That's dope. So I guess now, one of the things you recently did was write a book, and is has it been different, or has it kind of been a continuation of how you're able to express yourself and being present where you're at now?
That's a great question. At first, at first it was different. At first, I'm like, because it's so funny, Ashton, because we often, I feel like this is the actually the because I work with a nonprofit called Soul Food Cypher here in Atlanta.
Mm,
And we teach at a set of schools called Condesi, and we actually started to branch out to a few other schools as part of like our outreach program.
mm,
So normally in these classes, we're doing freestyle rap and like the pillars of like hip hop, mostly focusing and centering on that through freestyle rap,
mm,
and then also because other things like grammar, words, just literature, those things go into the
mm,
freestyling. So like we teach that as well in those facets and pockets where it shows up, like what's a simile, what's a metaphor, how do you
mm,
use that in a rhyme, so on and so forth, right?
mm,
Um, Especially younger children, because I've worked with, I want to say at this point in my life, from 5 to 15. I'd say 5 to 15, like is like the range where I've been able to work inside that particular school system, even by itself.
mm,
Younger children haven't necessarily been indoctrinated with the belief that if I start something new, it's going to be difficult or
mm.
possibly even unattainable because I've never done it before.
Right.
They'll just keep attempting. And if you don't put them in a space where they're being laughed at or jeered at or like put down,
Mm,
they'll normally get it pretty quick because they can do it anyway.
mm,
It's the same thing with adults, but normally as adults, we have so much mental baggage already up here that says, oh, well, I've never written a book before. And the only things I have experience with are because that's the where you start getting into gray areas. For some people, writing a book is an art form. For some
yeah.
people, writing a book is a business transaction.
Mm,
I exist in both of those worlds. And there's also other worlds I might not even be aware of. But if we just look at those two, right?
right.
Well, I'm like, well, I've been an artist for so long. How could I write a book? But then
Mm,
I'm like, but as a business person, this is diversifying my portfolio. So why wouldn't I write a book?
mm,
So it literally was a push and pull of like, well, you can't do this. Well, you better figure it out. Well, you can do this. Well, you should figure it out.
mm,
So I would funny enough, I actually had the concept for the book for 5.5 years.
mm,
I've been teaching at the Condesi school system for 5.5 years. The book was actually born out of those experiences. But I kept, because what it actually started as first was a podcast.
mm,
Uh, and then I was like, and that the podcast only recently happened at the tail end in November, like September, November of last year. I started
mm.
the podcast.
Okay.
But for the whole 5.5 years leading up to that, to 2023, I
Mm,
kept telling myself, well, I don't think anybody will listen to that, or I don't think anybody will be interested in that, or there's too many things out there, or there's too many things. And then after I put the podcast out, I was like, what would be a good way to further spread this information? Oh, a book. And then I'm like, well, who's going to read a book about this? Who's going to, and then it's
yeah.
funny because the podcast already exists.
Mm,
But then as I go to jump to something different, which seems more unobtainable, because I've actually been doing YouTube since I was a teenager. Funny enough,
mm,
I've been monetized on YouTube twice in my life at
mm,
16 and 25. And literally both weeks, literally the week after, both times in my life, Asher, YouTube changed its monetization policy
mm.
and we lost that monetization. So we
Mm.
weren't able to collect on any of those funds.
Oh,
So it was like hilarious, but like I was like, well, I'll just keep doing YouTube anyway because I know if I'm like once if I practice something to the point where I've gotten success at it, if I keep doing it, I should at some point hit success again, whether
right,
it
right.
happens when I'm 55,000 or whether it happens in the next 2 years.
Yeah.
So in the same concept of the book, I was like, well, I already have all of these notes. I already have all this source information. I already literally spend thousands of hours like listening to hip hop on my own, listening to music on my own, listening to R&B and gospel and spirituals on my own, like rock. Why wouldn't I just distill that information and put it into a book? So it would be
Yeah.
like I would go back to like I started writing notes just in notebooks actually. Actually, I have them funny enough with me. I just started writing in
Oh,
these.
nice.
And
Yeah.
the job that I'm currently at right now corporately, because I also work through my wife and this company,
Mm,
um, we have periods of time where like say like Chick-fil-A might come here for a month.
mm.
They run out I actually also work at the Georgia International Convention Center in College Park right now.
Okay.
So Chick-fil-A would be here for a month. They rent out the entire building for a month. So
Mm,
after you set up for like however many hundreds of people, thousands of people they'll have here over time, you're not doing anything for a month. You're staring at paint dry unless somebody
mm.
calls you on the radio to come get something or to come move something or to come assist them.
Yeah.
You're just looking at the wall. So I was like, what would be the best utilization of my time? I should probably start working on that book. So I would literally just start page by page, just like writing little notes, like writing like, okay, chapter one would be this, or chapter two would be this, or like, what if I just figured out or came up with this idea? Like,
Mm,
and then as I was doing that, I would literally be like, okay, I have enough of this that I could probably type it into something.
mm,
So I started just literally typing it into Word. And some days, like, I might get a page or 2 pages out,
mm,
but other days I might procrastinate for a week
mm.
and then be like, oh, I can't, no one's gonna, whatever. And then funny enough, so in that period of time while I'm sitting here at Chick-fil-A or sitting here while Chick-fil-A is in the building, I'm like,
Mm.
but the time is gonna pass anyway. The
Right.
time is in a year, this year is gonna pass anyway. If you don't start, it's not a detriment necessarily. Like it's like always the idea too, like especially living in America, that you always have to be productive, that you always have to be doing something, that you need to literally have your hand in like every single direction that you could possibly have it in, and then still be figuring out more things to do. Like that's very normalized in our culture.
Right.
But in the same way, it's also like, but if you just had one idea that you just spent an hour on a day, or like 5 minutes or whatever, if you could only dedicate 30 seconds to it, and you
Mm.
dedicated 30 seconds to it in a year, that's going to add up over time. So it
Yeah.
literally just became a thing of like, I just had to literally work myself into that mindset of, well, if I just spend as much time as I can find myself to spend on it, whether that be 30 seconds, sometimes it literally might be, or an
Mm.
hour or 2 hours, I'll eventually complete this book. And that's literally how I got it done, Asher. I just would literally go, okay, I've already done the notes in this, like in these notebooks. So why don't I just transcribe that into the actual Word document? And if I just keep doing it, if I just keep going back,
Yeah.
eventually the book will be finished. And it was because so I actually published two books, and the audiobook actually just came out, I believe, yesterday. I'm gonna
Okay.
send you a redemption code for it as well, if you feel any interest to check it out.
Okay.
But the ebook was the first book, and that was 24 pages exactly, because I wanted it to be something that someone could read,
Hmm.
find informational, and then immediately apply what they were learning to freestyle. I want them to like go through 250 pages and then be like, I don't know anything more than when I started,
Right.
and I paid money for this. I'm very frustrated. So
Yeah.
then the second book, which is the extended edition, is about 54 pages.
Hmm.
And that one is a paperback. That one's the actual first physical copy of the book that exists anywhere. And those are still available on Amazon. I'm actually about to start carrying physical copies with me in general.
Gotcha.
But that was so that people could get in just an expansion on what was learned in the first book. But
Mm.
my idea was like literally in the first book, I wanted you to be like, if you picked this up and you read it, it would have been enough. You know what
Mm.
I mean? And I've actually gotten that feedback back from people. They've even told me it's not just even freestyle that I could apply this to. It's like just general day-to-day life, or just
Mm.
other things that I could even apply this to. And that was my overall goal, actually. I wanted it to be something that someone could pick up and be like, oh, this is, I basically wanted to be a guide that I could have found when I was a child. Like, oh, this was helpful for me. And
Right.
then you could just actually apply it in real time. So to your point, it was it was a process of working myself into that mindset that I could do it. But there
Mm,
was a bit of pushback where I was like, "Oh, I've never written a book before. How would I do that?" And I was
right,
like,
right.
the same way you do everything else, you practice. You
Mm,
go and you find you fail technically, and you get
mm,
back up and you do it again until you're like, "Oh, I have." Like and I always tell my students this. I love this analogy because of their faces. How many of us in here can speak English? How many of you knew English right out of the womb?
mm,
Did any of you know English coming into the world?
mm,
No, but you learned it, right? People spoke it around you. You got it from the TV shows and the music and the comic books or the books or whatever it is you absorb it from. And now we're all just in here speaking English. You're understanding every word that's coming out of my mouth. Or if you need me to explain a word to you, you know
mm,
how to ask me to explain that word. Oh, I don't understand that. Could you explain that word to me?
mm,
We've literally gotten to the point now where we're able to just converse in this language that none of us knew. How do we
mm.
do that? Practice, repetition, and then being able to carry the practice and repetition around with us subconsciously. Same thing with freestyle. Same thing with business.
Right.
Same thing with driving a car. Same thing. It's the same. It's the same process across the board. Now,
Mm,
how we access and how we practice individually may be different for all of us. We may not all practice or think the same. That's fine. But
right.
how we actually arrive at our conclusions, we just do practice. You just keep practicing. You just keep doing it. And then at some point, you get to a point where you're like, I don't have to think about speaking English. I just say words.
Mm,
I'm not even thinking about what words I'm saying. The words are ingrained in my literal, like, you know what I mean? So it's like
yeah, yeah.
same thing with anything else, to your point. So that's how I had to get about the book. I was like, if I just keep ingraining it, then it'll just become a thing. I don't need to think about how I'm going to accomplish this. It just becomes something that I accomplish.
Mm. Wow. I like that because as you're talking, I've had this question keep bouncing back and forth in my mind. I just keep saying like, how do you practice? How do you practice? How do you practice? And it's like, it's like as you're explaining, it's like, okay, here is how you practice. And it's like you look at the things that you've already done, what you're proficient at, even if you think like, oh, I'm bad at being everything. It's like, okay, maybe that's a pessimistic approach, but you're pretty good at being pessimistic. And it's like that's a practice unto itself. So if you look at how am I effectively pessimistic, maybe you can do something that's other words different than pessimism. So that's hilarious.
Literally to your point, actually, because it's funny because as much as I'm an optimist for everyone else,
Mhm.
or I'll say, as much as I have been an optimist for everyone else, I was a pessimist for myself more than
Mm.
anyone else. So I'm like, I can see that working out for you, but I just can't see how that would work out for me. And
Right.
it's funny because the same thing with habit, right?
Mm.
Sometimes, and the funniest thing about habit, you may not know you do something until someone else points it out to you.
Mm.
Hey, do you notice that you tend to like smile when you laugh? Do you notice that you tend to like cut people off when they're talking? Do you notice you tend to like hold the door open for certain people and not for certain other people, or like,
Mm.
which is like the whole idea of like even chivalry, or like how many of us are raised or socialized. Like, there are a lot of things that just in day to day, you may not realize that you do it. I know this about myself. There are tons of things that I've gotten from like, and that's actually the beauty of like living and being able to like spend time around your parents and your family, because
Mm.
you can be like, oh, the way I laugh is like my dad,
Mm.
the way I tell jokes is like my mom. The way I
Mm.
tend to like go and like greet people is like my grandmother. You know what I mean? Like,
Yeah.
and you literally get to see those characteristics in them, and then you get to like notice them in yourself as like, oh, I am my own person, but I also am this. I also am these things from my family, these things from the people around me, these things from my friend or my environment. I am these things.
Yeah.
And I can choose to continue to be those things, or I can change them, or I can identify with them, or I can not identify with them. But to your point, when you notice that you're doing something, when you notice that you're, oh, I actually am an extreme pessimist, and I'm
Mm.
actually really good at that. What aspects of that transfer over into freestyling? Well, normally, and that's the other thing about habit too, especially when you get really good at habit, it normally
Mm.
runs on autopilot. So, like when the pessimistic thoughts just come up, if you don't stop them or find some
Yeah.
other way to divert them or do something that takes your mind away from them, they just run autopilot. So it's like, how do I get myself to freestyle on autopilot?
Mm.
I just need to continuously keep drilling in the concept of freestyle. So what I would do is, even before I was quote unquote, where people were like, because for a long time, which is hilarious now, that people are like, you're so good, you're so talented, you're so amazing. How do you do that? People just as much told me as I was practicing the years leading up to that, you're trash. That was terrible. Please never rap again. Why? why would you do that? I didn't understand anything you said. You're really weird when you rap. You know that? Like these are all the things that I would get told.
Mm,
And it's hilarious because even through that, I'd be like, well, I'll just keep going practicing. Maybe I got discouraged for a month. I'll pick it back up in another month. Maybe I didn't rap for like 6 months. I'll pick
mm,
it back up in another month after those 6 months are over. So literally, it's the idea of like constantly finding ways to it's like the same idea of when people say they go to a different country to immerse themselves in the language and the culture, especially
mm.
if their goal is to learn that language.
Yeah.
You just create an environment around you that you can immerse yourself in. So if your environment in this particular sense is freestyle rapping,
Yeah.
well, I mean, you don't really have to go far, especially being in America, to run into rap or hip hop or
Mm,
really anything that relates to that culture. But you just literally find ways to create that atmosphere around you. And because of the way that technology is now, especially like YouTube and a lot of the algorithms, once they know that you like a certain thing, or once you even click on one video by accident, they're going to promote 20,000 other videos they think might be interesting to you because they want you to stay on their platform. They want you to be interested. They want you to spend time with them because it creates ad revenue for them, money, et cetera, et cetera.
right.
So then other people are also then feeding into your idea. They're like, oh, you like this? Here are books about this. Here are
Mm,
podcasts about this. Here are TV shows, movies. Have you seen this? Do you know about that? Have you talked to this person?
mm,
So it literally just becomes, as you practice and continually do it by yourself, you just begin to attract and run into those people. Because in the same way that we always say, real recognizes real. It's like if somebody really is about what they say they are, they don't have to talk about it. It's literally something that people feel from you. Are you a boxer? Do you dance? You probably
mm,
work in this. And it might not be that everyone can pick up on that, but the people that do, when they
mm,
do, they just ping you for that because they are most likely that themselves or have
mm.
been around those people to the point where like literally you just remind them of that. And the
Right.
thing I always like, the funny way that I always think about this is because I've spent so much time in New York,
Hmm.
normally when I hear somebody talk, and there's many New Yorkers who are down here in Georgia,
Yeah.
I can hear them talk and I'll go, what part of New York are you from? I'm like,
Mm,
oh, Harlem. Oh, the Bronx. Oh, you know I'm from New York? I'm like, yeah, because my family's from there. So the
mm.
moment I heard you talk, it just immediately, not that everyone from New York sounds the same, just
Right.
like
Right.
not everyone in any area sounds the same, but you start to get and pick up on general characteristics that in every case you may not be able to use to generalize, but in many
Mm,
cases are exactly what it is. So
yeah.
to your point, it's literally just if you're already good at being pessimistic, and I actually talk about this in the book, I actually said that if you're good at one thing already, then freestyling for you may literally just be researching that topic, researching freestyle the way that you researched the topic you're already good at. So if
Mm,
you can just literally carry over the things that you already do well,
yeah.
you're naturally just going to become better at the thing that you're focusing on because you're using ingrained habits that are already easier for you to access, already easier for your brain to access, and
Mm,
you're just applying them to something else, which your brain will go, oh, I can do that, rather than saying, oh, I've never done this before and I have no background in it. And how will I learn how to do this? Which then for many people is where oh, I can't, I'll never figure it out. I'll
mm.
never, but in reality, it's like you probably would if you just
Right.
kept at it. Yeah.
Mm. That's a great point. So what's the book called? From the first one to the second one?
Oh, so you just freestyle
Mm,
volume one.
mm,
Volume one, the ebook is the hand guide edition,
mm,
and it's still volume one and the extended edition. So the ebook is volume one hand guide,
mm.
and the volume one extended is the paperback.
Gotcha.
And then the idea is to have, I'm looking at like 12, maybe 13 volumes, because there's actually a lot just to write about general like hip hop culture and stuff as in and of itself.
Yeah.
And to be fair, and I actually have to give a huge shout out to Joseph Stewart,
Hmm.
adjunct professor of hip hop over at CAU at Clark Atlanta University. Shout out Clark. Joe Stu. He said one time, he's like, it's not too late to go back and study hip hop. It's been at this point we were nearing 50 years of
Hmm.
50 years of hip hop. We hadn't hit that point yet. I think
Yeah.
he might have said this actually back in 2019.
Hmm.
And it's funny because he said it as a one-off. I don't even think he realized how much he inspired me in that moment. But at that point, I was in my 20s. You know what I mean? So I'm
Hmm.
thinking to myself, like, it's too it's too late for me to go back and study the years of, and that's just talking about hip hop, right? That's not
Yeah.
even talking about the years of R&B, the
Hmm.
years of gospel that inspired the R&B, the years of spirituals that inspired that, the years of
Hmm.
it's so far gone that I'll never be able to gain a foothold
Hmm.
in that. And he said that, and like a true instructor, he inspired me without even knowing it to then go and research and learn about those things.
Yeah.
So It's literally just been now like a progression of there's just so much information out there about hip hop. There's so much misinformation, not for necessarily a bad thing either. There's just so much stuff we don't know. Where did this come from? How did this get here? Who
Right,
was the
right.
first person to start this? I don't even know if we'll know the answers to those things,
Hmm.
but there's just a plethora of information. And I was like, I know that other people are genuinely interested in this, like just like I am, even if they have no intention of rapping or
Right.
dancing or DJing or anything. They just want to know. So the idea is to have like a 12 volume series, and then to make an audiobook for every one of those.
Mm,
And then what I want to do is every audiobook version will have one where it's like not very much music, and then one
mm,
where and I got this idea from Russ actually, a Georgia artist out here who released an audiobook a while back called It's All in Your Head, if I'm not misquoting. But
mm,
in between every chapter, he would put a song of his. Now on platforms like Audible and like Spotify and stuff, depending on
mm,
like how you're using Spotify, that may
mm,
not do anything. You're not necessarily getting paid for those songs, although he might have been, which is also like where I was like, this should be a good idea to just implement.
mm,
But say like someone, as it often happens nowadays, say someone like rips your book off of like Spotify and they upload it to YouTube, which is
mm.
fine
Yeah.
because you can still actually recoup funds off of that. It's not a bad thing like it used to be for me,
Mm,
at least the way that I'm looking at it.
yeah. Yeah.
When that would happen, the content ID would catch each one of those songs.
Mm,
So they would, so say there's 7 songs in between all the chapters. All 7 of those songs are content ID.
mm,
It's not on Russ's personal page, but on
mm,
this person who has uploaded this book, it's gotten 30 million views, right?
mm,
He's gotten paid for all 30 million of those views, and he didn't even upload that book to that
mm.
particular person's page. So in that way, all these are songs that I've worked on with other artists.
Yeah.
I've always been really big, especially because just historically looking at music as a business in all aspects, regardless of what your creed, color, nationality, or religion is, it's just
Mm,
always been a lot of people not getting credited or paid for their work
mm.
correctly.
Yeah.
And then even more so in our community, it's been people like, like even TLC, you know what I
Mm,
mean? Where they're like, hey, we're out here winning this award and you think we're like super rich and stuff. And I just bought a house and I have barely any money to afford this house, even. Like,
mm.
how does that make sense? You know what I mean? So I was
Right.
like, I was always of the mindset I want to pay all the engineers who work with me. I want to pay the person who made the beat. I want to pay them, and then I want them to be on the split sheet for this project. I want them indefinitely to be able to gain something from this. And if they
Mm,
decide, because not everybody wants money, not everybody
yeah.
wants recognition. Even sometimes they're like, hey, the creation of it, the art of it was enough for me. That's all
Mm,
I need.
right. Right.
Donate the money somewhere else or keep it for yourself.
Mm,
In those cases, I do that, but it's like I wanted literally to create these kind of like communities, these kind of pockets where people would just continuously benefit over time. So, even the audiobook version that I've just recently published, I did so at Knock Hard Studios, Knock Hard Studio in, or actually, let me not say Peter's name. It's Knock Hard Production. I always like to say
mm.
studio, but it's actually Knock Hard Production, run
Gotcha.
by Peter Jacobson in
Mm,
Doraville, Georgia.
mm,
Um, I worked with him on the entirety of the audiobook, and there's 2 songs at the very end of it, one instrumental, and the song that the instrumental is it's a freestyle actually,
mm,
because going in line with the book. Um, from some of our sessions in 2020.
mm,
So every sale that I get off of this audiobook, and I've actually done this in contract already with Peter,
mm,
Peter will receive 50% of that for the
mm,
entirety of his life indefinitely. If he says, at whatever point, because at some point we do leave, and I'm going to set this up in trust so that my descendants and the descendants of the people who have worked on this music or this art or whatever with me will continue to receive those benefits.
mm.
If he says, I want to transfer this over to this person in my family, or I want to donate it to this particular cause, then I will make sure that happens. But the idea is like literally, I want to create these these spaces and these pockets where people indefinitely will be able to benefit over time. Because I feel
Mm.
like that just, if you can, you don't necessarily need to know what people are going to do with the money, but if you know you're working with individuals of sound mind and good heart, and you're funding them and they're funding you, then that's all you need, them to
Right.
be able to continually fund what it is they're doing.
I like that.
Yeah.
And that's awesome. I'm glad we were able to have this conversation and just being able to bounce off of your energy. And like you said, you smile when you speak, and just being able to like share a little bit of your story or get into your mind a bit and see what it is that makes you move, like what gets you excited, and those things are really inspiring to me.
No, I appreciate that. No, for real, Astro. I thank you actually for even reaching out because I had sent you a link for the book. And so funny enough, like I've probably sent out just on Instagram alone
Mhm.
over 3,000 of those. You
Mhm.
know what I mean? I've literally just been like, and I think the book is currently at 46 sales right now. It's been out since June. So we're actually doing pretty good. But
Mhm.
people will be like, oh, 46 sales. That's so great. People are just like flocking to it. How did you do that? And I was like, I sent out at least 3,000 correspondences on Instagram. I sent out 1,000 on Facebook. I hit everybody in my phone. And sometimes like you don't get any response. You
Mhm.
get the like, you get the good job. Cause also, that's also the thing about, to your point, going back to the original question about putting out art, just because you put out art doesn't mean that everybody is one in a place to receive it.
Mhm.
Even if they want to support you, that they're in a place to support you if what you're looking for is monetarily, or even if you're just looking for the listen, even if you're just
Mhm.
looking for the view. Like everyone, it's like that's the beautiful thing to me, and something that before it was beautiful was very difficult for me to understand.
Mhm.
Just because you put out art doesn't mean that everyone is there can support you in that moment.
Mhm.
But that shouldn't be the reason that you don't put out the art, because if you never put it out, then they can never support you. They can
Mhm.
never, like, I've sold plenty of books here. Funny fact, actually. So this building opened 21 years ago this year.
Mhm.
I've literally been in this building because my mom currently works here right now. She
Mhm.
also does other stuff outside of here, but she's working here as an event coordinator.
Yeah.
She actually was the reason that I was in this building. So
Mhm.
when she started working here, of course, I just came here. I used to sleep under her desk. You know what I mean? Like
Mhm.
all that energy, all that. Like, so I've literally ran around this building for 21 years. People here have literally watched me grow up into the person that I am today.
Mhm.
And I've literally been talking to them about it. They're like, "What are you doing with your life nowadays?" I'm like, "Oh, I recently published a book." They're like, "Get out. No way. I'd love to support that. Let me buy it."
Mhm.
But had I never put out the book, there would be nothing for them to support. There'd be nothing for them to buy. So it's like, it's this idea of, okay, maybe everyone doesn't. And then if I'm not being pessimistic or jaded about it, maybe everyone
Mhm.
is not in a place too where they can support me.
Mhm.
But if I never ever put it out, I can't be mad at anybody for not giving me that support, because there was
Right.
never anything for them to support. So it's literally just been like a progression of reminding myself that I can do this. I didn't know if that was being picked up. There were
No,
some
you're
folks
good.
walking by the office. Um, so yeah, it's literally just been like constantly like, and I appreciate you saying that, like about the energy, because that's actually what gets me most excited. Like it's where the artist part of me and the business part of me are like completely in agreement, and there's no friction whatsoever.
Mhm.
It's the idea that if I could benefit other people by my art
Mhm.
and by the monetary or whatever it is that they gain from it, if it's not monetary,
Right.
then that's ultimately what I want. Then I've done my job as both as a business person and as an artist, and like that is something that actually that even in those moments where I'd be like, you know what, I don't think I can write this book, or you know what, I don't think I can put this song out, or I don't think this is starting my wife and I's company and doing self-contracting or setting up rooms or doing AV or sound. I don't think any of this is viable or makes any sense. And then I think about, but how many people would you benefit?
Mhm.
How many people, like how would that even benefit your family? What would that do for your just your day-to-day life? What would it be like to have time and freedom legally and morally, and then
Mhm.
be able to also share that with other people? What would that be like? And that, even in my darkest moments, Asher, that has been like the guiding light for me. That is the thing that time and time again will bring me back and be like, no, I have to go do this. Like
Yeah.
even if I need to take 6 months, even if I need to give myself grace, even if I have to step away from it, even if I'm not mentally or spiritually prepared to do so, like what would be the benefit if I were to just do this? And that always brings me back. So that honestly gets me more excited than anything else. The idea that it is maybe possible. I don't know necessarily what an easy life looks like. I don't know if
Mhm.
I even necessarily want an easy life, but
Mhm.
I do want a fun life. I
Yeah.
do want a life where I feel good about it, where I feel good about the way I treat people around me and the way they treat me, where I just feel good in general. And I
Mm.
believe that's possible. I believe that's obtainable. I believe that's obtainable even without money and accolades and art and et cetera, et cetera. It's
Yeah.
that's more so a mindset thing. But even however you get to any of those things, it's still the process of one, practicing it,
Mm.
figuring out that's the habit you want to make, and then actively going towards it. Because you could say, I want to do all these things, and then you could be a day later like, nothing's working, and I don't think it's ever going to work. And I should probably just, I think I'm gonna throw in the towel on this one. I think I'm just gonna give it up here.
Yeah.
So perfect example. Perfect example.
Awesome. And how can people get in touch with you? How can they follow you online or offline?
Oh, if you want to find me online, that's Howard 13th, Howard HOWARD 13TH, one phrase on everything pretty much. Except Twitch. Twitch is Rondald James 8. I tried to
Mm.
put in the asterisks, but of course they don't let you do it. So it's an 8 on both YouTube and on Twitch. It's Rondald
Mm.
James 8, and then on everything else, it's Howard 13th. And then if you want to find the music, it's Rondald James with an asterisk. Don't forget the asterisk because the way that my name is spelled, I actually have most people think my name is Ronald, but it's
Mm.
Rondal. I have like a
Mm.
few pronunciations of my name, but
Mm.
because of that, most computers when you type my name in, they don't think I exist unless you
Mm.
continuously put into the search engine and then train the algorithm to recognize that you're asking it something and not
Right.
incorrectly entering information.
Mm.
So Ronald James will take you to all the music, and then Rondal Owens will take you to the books and the podcast as well.
Mm.
Uh, but thank you so much, Asher, for this. This has been huge. I really appreciate you and your platform and your
You're very
time.
welcome. And I'll ask you this one last question. Are you still who you said you were from the first question?
Oh, that is a great, wow, that's a great way to end out. No, Asher, I think in every moment, just like all of us, I am always constantly, consistently changing.
Mm.
Um, and nowadays I say that's for the better. Before I would have said that I wasn't getting any better, that that was the pessimistic side of me.
Hmm.
But no, every day I feel like, especially when I'm really giving myself grace. No, I'm always getting better in every moment. Even as we're having this conversation, I'm changing. I'm
Mm.
realizing even how you were saying about putting on the transcribe. You know what I mean? Like I'm literally getting new ideas. I'm like, oh, that would be perfect for when we after we finish this interview, we
Mm.
can post the whole script to Medium and to
Mm.
Substack. I don't have to go back and literally type out everything that we said, like all
Right,
the
right.
ahs and ums and oohs. Like it's like literally they were just already. So no, in every moment, and for all of us, I feel like there's a chance to become the person that you'd like to be.
Yeah.
And there's also a chance to remain exactly the same as you are. But
Mm.
no, to your point and to your great question, I'm definitely not. I've definitely already I'll say evolved in that sense.
Awesome. Well, thanks again for your time, and it was a pleasure talking to you today.
Thank you so much, Asher. Wishing you a phenomenal day, and likewise,
Take care.
you as well. Peace.
Peace.